I'm going to be talking about how we use DMP, deep memory process. A client comes to us to explore a particular issue in their life that they're having problems with, that's affecting them in some shape or form. And with DMP, what we'll do is actually explore that client's childhood experiences and memories or situations, as well as adulthood, to see whether these experiences, the influences that they're having in their life today, come from those areas. But in DMP, we also look at soul wounds. And I'm going to talk about these soul wounds. The first one is really, as a spirit being, before you came into this life, what decisions, what influences, what experiences and choices did you make as a spirit being? Why you chose this family? What were the patterns, the learning for this life that you wanted to experience? Another soul wound I want to talk about is the experiences you may have had in your mother's womb. During this period of gestation, when the baby is growing, there are many experiences, many things you may have absorbed that in actual fact don't belong to you. Your mother's feelings and thoughts, her experiences may have had a negative effect on you as a baby. So we also look at the birth. What kind of birth did you have? Were any of those experiences contributing to what you're experiencing as an adult in your life today? It's a very important area, and one that gets missed a lot of the time, is what happens, what are the experiences, what are the energy, thoughts and feelings, and also the events that happen to your mother, because as a baby you're going to take those on board. Another soul wound is the influence and energy that comes to us from our ancestors, the generational influences, the unfinished business from our ancestors. Now these energies, these influences can range from our ancestors, maybe they had to migrate, maybe they experienced starvation. Some ancestors fail in business and their energy, their spirit is still with the family today, travelling through different generations to the client who comes with the issue. So these ancestral issues are very important to clear and transform and help our ancestors be at peace. Some of our ancestors may have got lost in battle, their bodies lost. So in DMP we work with the residues, the unfinished business of our ancestors. Another soul wound I'd like to talk about is the energy and residues left from past lives. Now, the interesting thing about any of these soul wounds is that you don't have to believe in the term past lives. You don't have to believe in that. We can work with it as a story, allowing the unconscious to express itself. But for those of you who do believe in past lives, this approach of DMP really fits the Tibetan Buddhist philosophy of what happens to your spirit after death. If you are unresolved, if there is something from a past life situation or experience that you had in that past life that still affects you as a spirit, you will carry that over into many lifetimes. So to give you an example, if you died in battle and you had the sense or the feeling of wanting to go home, be with your family, but your spirit is forever wandering after that life, you may come into this life with a sense of never really feeling at home, always feeling that in life that you're wandering and searching for something you can't even really describe. Because in actual fact, this influence is from a past life. So one of the last kinds of soul wounds that DMP works with is we actually explore and work with what we call spirit attachments. Energies that don't actually belong to the client, energies that have become attached for different reasons at some point during your lifetime. Now these spirit attachments can be in human form, in other words, they've had a human life, or they're non-human. So energies that don't have a human form but still have some sort of consciousness, some sort of life cycle, and for some reason they're attached to the client. So in DMP, we explore these using different processes to help the client be free of the influences, because really that's what DMP is there for, is whatever these influences are and from wherever they come from, we're wanting to actually clear the negative ones, clear the influences that are having a negative effect on the client's life today. So human spirits that you may have picked up, to give you an example, I had a client who had come to me for a session, and during this session we discovered that there was a spirit attachment, and this attachment had happened when she had travelled to a different country, America, on holiday, had been really fascinated by the painted desert, felt really connected there, but what she wasn't aware of was at the same time she picked up a tribal spirit of a woman who died centuries before. This spirit brought with her sadness, loss and despair about losing children. And for the client today, she was carrying this sense of having lost somebody, loved one, but in her actual life she hadn't lost anybody. So in DMP we were able to help clear and help the spirit move on and find out and explore what had attracted the spirit to this woman. Another soul wound I'd like to talk about is what we call the split parts or fragmented parts of a client. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, basically a client may come to me for a session, and what we discover is that during an experience or a difficult event in their life situation from their childhood or adulthood, that when they were experiencing it, a part of their energy split off. Now, what can happen is at this particular event or particular situation, let's say at 10 years old, they experience something upsetting, a part of our energy leaves. Now, it can leave us physically or hide within us somewhere. And they tend to get stuck, still feeling, still experiencing the emotions and thoughts of that upsetting event. But they're no longer fully connected with the client's energy. So in DMP we use skills and techniques to help first of all identify this split off part. A client may have many, depending on how many issues or particularly upsetting events and experiences they've had. And not only identifying where it is, in other words outside of the client or inside the client, hiding, but what memories are these parts still repeating? What are they still feeling? And help bring healing and resolution for those parts. And then part of the healing is to bring about integration so that these child parts, these split off parts, return to the client for integration. So this requires delicate, complex skills, which are DMP. So I hope this gives you a better idea of fragmented parts, split off parts. In shamanic terms, for those of you who understand shamanism, we would call this soul loss. A part of our energy leaves us, and the shaman would go and retrieve this part to bring that back. So in DMP, we are like shamans. We are like practitioners who are helping the client find and bring back those parts of themselves that are lost to become integrated and whole. Another soul wound that I want to talk about is the influence and issues when an individual absorbs projections from others. So as we grow up, people around us, our family, members of the community, their projections, sometimes individuals absorb and become their own. So DMP works very well in helping to identify, clarify and also release those energies, those projections from other people. So another form of spirit attachment is the non-human form. And exactly what are these? Well, basically they're types of energy that don't have a human life or haven't had a human life, and they're attached in some shape or form with a client. Now, I'll give you an example of one of these non-human attachments. I had a client who came to me who was having difficulty, physical difficulty with her foot. And what we discovered using DMP techniques, that in actual fact she had a gnome from the energy realm to do with the earth in her foot. When we explored where and when this gnome had first come to her, it was when she was around about 12 years old and walking through a forest and had accidentally stepped on the house of where this gnome lived. The gnome at the time tried to get away and jumped into what he thought was his house, and in actual fact he had jumped into the client's foot. So what's really interesting about this example is that the gnome wasn't being purposely negative towards the client and wasn't even aware he was in actual fact inside a human's foot. He thought he had jumped into his house. So you can see from this example that he wasn't thinking negative thoughts and wanting to upset or hurt the human that he was with, because he wasn't aware he was with a human. He was in his reality, in his perception, he was in his house, and he was tidying up his house after this human had walked through the house and obviously the forest. But when he was tidying up what he thought were roots, moving to one side or cutting them away, what he didn't realise was that he was in actual fact interfering with the client's foot and her tendons and muscles. So DMP is very useful to help clear away energies that aren't necessarily negative but are in the wrong place. Sometimes there are other types of non-human attachment, and these come at certain times in a client's life where there was an upset or a difficulty or a trauma, and the client isn't fully present in their body and there's enough space energy-wise for something to move in. Now, these non-human energies can be attracted to a human who is experiencing difficulty because of the vibration. The vibration that we emanate out is really what some of these spirit attachments, both human and non-human, actually travel to us. It's a vibration. They're not necessarily aware they're with a human being. So both the human form of spirit attachment and the non-human can come to anybody at any time, and it is not necessarily for a negative reason. They're not necessarily focusing on wanting to disrupt or hurt the human they are with. It could be that they are in their own reality, in their own perception of their reality, but the two worlds have collided. So DMP is a very useful approach and process to help work with all these types of soul wounds. So I hope you've enjoyed the brief overview that I've given on the types of soul wounds, the types of areas of a client's life that we can work with. So till next time, bye.